You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe White.
Welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. So we're in May of 2025, and so the County Council is in the full swing of their budget season. And we're also seeing a lot of action with the City Council. If they can't find one thing to fight about, they're looking for something to sue each other over. So in order to talk about all this is Mr. Mike Goldberg from Del Mar, Dr. Joe Venosa from Salisbury.
Sir.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Look, these shows are going to have to start getting longer.
They're
just
we need
giving
a
us
laugh track, man.
a laugh track and maybe an episode a day at this rate.
And there's just so much to work with these days with all the shenanigans.
Well, let's start with the county budget. I mean, this is we're at the finish line, so to speak. There's a couple more meetings before they'll vote on this sometime in June. We saw a lot at the budget hearing on May 8th. Particularly, it seemed like their state's attorney was kind of left out in the cold with her positions being funded at the lowest level by the county executive.
We met with the county executive and her team, I believe it was March, to talk about our requests from a salary perspective and operational funding. And there were no concerns expressed at that time. There was no information provided at any point about, what the plan was with vacancies, what would happen with them. Certainly, I've come to know, as I've indicated, that all other vacancies in the county are funded at the midpoint, whereas my ASA positions were stripped down from FY25 funding to the minimum. 3 of the 4 positions listed on the vacancy report provided by Ms. Oland on April 25th have been spoken. We are now having to deal with this challenge, navigating this unprecedented reduction in SAO vacancy salary funding that is inconsistent with the executive's practices across other departments, as I am told, with no dialogue whatsoever.
Yeah, that was pretty shocking to see Jamie Dykes have to go there and basically in front of the public inform them that the executive basically defunded law enforcement through these rate cuts for new hires.
Yeah. Tipping fees came back up, and the county council is stating they have no interest in jacking these up as much as the county executive has asked for.
The public had noticed that we wanted these rates at $100 last year. That's been known for a year.
And we've had individual meetings with our major haulers, including the city of Salisbury, to discuss this topic.
I really think that before anything else is done at another time, that a public hearing be held specifically for rate increases.
I want to make sure that we have an operational and solvent landfill. The only way we can do that is by increasing our tipping fees. But I'm telling you, the discussion over tipping fees has been had.
What are we doing now, $80 a ton?
$78 a ton.
78 is what it went up.
100?
So we asked for a 2-step process of
$88 in July was our first ask, and then $100 by January.
But one thing I have heard from a couple of the haulers is if the tipping fee increase can be postponed until January and only go to 88, that would help them modify their business model, because this is going to take their business model and they're going to have to pass it along.
There's really no supporting documentation that these fees are needed to run the landfill.
Well, that's the theme of this whole circus, as it were, right? Is that there's massive amounts of financial desire, and this is what we want, but very little justification for anything.
Well, then you find out 9 months after a fiscal year ends that we have an $11.5 million surplus, and
Who knew?
the county executive wants to break the revenue cap. So,
Small detail.
although she says that was just a trick. We'll
Wow.
find out later.
She's used to tricks.
As
Yeah.
taxpayers, we just love being tricked by our government.
Taxed and tricked all at the same time. Let's talk about the director of Public Works, Mr. Mustafa. He left. He resigned his position less than 3 weeks or less than 4 weeks into, and this was a department head that the executive's office came to the county council and asked for a raise above at the highest level of the range.
There was a vacancy for I think 4 years for that
Yeah.
position, and I think he lasted 4 weeks.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot behind this, and I really think when you start looking at like Tim Bosman left the local management board, when you look at even Matt Leitzel, I mean, we spoke a lot against the confirmation process. We had no issues with Matt Leitzel himself. But our county executive has lost 3 major department heads: the head of the local management board, the deputy director of administration, and now the director of public works. So, Mike, I mean, talk about the Verizon building for a second. I mean, you and I have kind of watched this unfold for the last year and a half. It's, again, one of those situations where it's a deal too good to be true seems to come up, and we've bought in. We bought in 2024 at the tune of $3.6 million. And now the county executive has come back with a budget of $2.75 million just to renovate the building. And you used to secure loans for folks. I mean, would you do a loan for this?
Yeah, heck no. I mean, we're not even talking a renovation here. We're talking interior improvements, tenant improvements, essentially, to meet the needs of that particular tenant. Got to keep in mind, this is a public health building. It's not the Taj Mahal. It doesn't even have to be the highest level of finishes. It should be a fairly low, what I would call a contractor grade of finishes. But under no circumstance should tenant improvements be costing about 75% of the acquisition cost for the property. That number is so wacky that, just no serious commercial lender would take that seriously.
All right, so wacky. Dr. Venosa, we got to get into the city of Salisbury. We're looking at maybe a second lawsuit.
Yeah. So Mr. Nick Simpson, fresh back from a trip to Milan, Italy, to some Taylor Swift concerts, has recently announced the possibility that his firm will take the city of Salisbury to court over a $4 million set of funds that supposedly was specifically set aside for the hotel project that they are working on Lot 10.
So this was the Lot 10 that former Mayor Jake Day basically gave away as part of the whole downtown parking lot giveaway.
Correct.
Another giveaway was the Marina Landing.
Yeah.
I mean, that was given away for $1.
Correct. What's interesting about both one is a lawsuit, one is a prospective lawsuit. It hasn't been confirmed yet, although I think the reason why that was leaked to the media was because, this is my own personal belief, I believe that they're using that as a threat to get what they want. But both the company that is suing for the Marina Landing property and Mentis Capital both have some financial problems. Mentis Capital has a lien due to unpaid furniture in the Ross building.
Okay.
And then, of course, the issue with the company in Marina Landing. I believe they're a Baltimore-based company.
They need more of those big checks from Mayor Jake Day.
They look nice, unless you're not getting one. But ultimately, it's my understanding they've been found to be not in good standing.
Okay.
So it's interesting to sort of see why this is happening right now, and ultimately who is directing these particular decisions to push lawsuits.
So right now they have that hanging over their head. There also is the big increase in fees for water and sewer,
which nobody's talked about.
And then we have City Council President Jashawn Dowdy, who seems every time him and Randy Taylor speak, both of them get their feelings hurt.
Yeah, and I would throw Vice President Angela Blake in this. If anybody wants to watch the latest City Council meeting, it generally goes fine. It's relatively civil in the context of our local government. But toward the end of that meeting, it went off the rails again with I think, a very childish display by the vice president.
But it is almost as entertaining as the Jerry Springer show at times.
I used to say this to people. I said, if you ever feel bad about yourself, you have low self-esteem, watch the Jerry Springer show. Now I tell them, watch the city council meeting.
Well, and look, we brought up 3 things with the city council. We didn't even talk about a crosswalk, but that seems
on
to
the
be
docket
the number one thing for most people.
And it was interesting, though, because for all the online, sort of outrage, there were 2 people that spoke at the last meeting. It's my understanding that there are still discussions behind the scenes on that. So I guess in the end, it's important to sort of look at what actually happens versus what allegedly happens.
Well, while you're being distracted by the show, somebody's got their hand in your back pocket, pulling your wallet out and raising your taxes.
Well, and I think this is the basic thing that the citizens, at least in Salisbury, need to know, is that for all the discussion for all this other stuff, in the end, regular people are going to have to pay 6% more for their water and sewer. And a lot of that is basically because, and you can watch city council meeting where they say this, it's to pay the debt service. A lot of that debt we accrued. Why? Because we subsidized a lot of high-end projects that have yet to come to fruition.
And we have more on the
And we have more on the way.
So, in order to talk about these actually very, very serious topics, I want to bring in Jim Atkins from Mardella. I want to talk about the county budget process because he does not really miss very many meetings, and he also is somebody who's willing to dive into the budgets, the not the minutia, but the details. So when we come back, we're going to sit down with Mike Goldberg and Jim Atkins, and we're going to start diving into the county budget process. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. So we're in May of 2025, which means the fiscal year 26 budget, which would start July 1st, is in full swing. Lots of budget meetings, hearings, public comments times. We wanted to update everyone on that. In order to do that, I brought in Mr. Mike Goldberg from Delmar, Mr. Jim Atkins from Mardella. Thanks for coming out.
Sure.
The both of you attend many of the county council meetings and are both very well aware of the budget process and some of the challenges that we're facing, whether it comes from the state or internally. A lot of information came out of the May 8th budget hearing. Start with Jim. I want to start with you. Let's talk about the pay raises that were proposed by the county executive versus the signals that the county council was giving everyone over what they feel like they'll do.
Yeah, a lot of it was, of course, they talk about the employees of the county would receive a 3% cost of living increase that would become effective on July 1st. And then on January the 1st, they would receive a 2% raise to give them a total of 5%. However, when you got into the department head functions, you had proposed raises anywhere from 10% to 31% for department heads. And as the state's attorney pointed out in her budget hearing, she had some assistant state's attorneys that they had actually decreased their money from last year.
Now, you say they, but you're talking about the executive's office,
executives,
right?
And the budget process that she touts, that all the departments come in and sit down and they talk and agree to all this. My biggest problem with the raises is, number one, if the employees are only worthy of a 5% increase in the county, then the department heads are worthy of a 5% increase. Well, they should get the same thing.
Even the ones that's getting a 5% raise. Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
They're worth more money than 5%. That's what I'm saying about morale and fairness. But it looks to me like when you go throwing out 27% raises and 31% raises to some people and somebody else is getting a 5% raise, that just causes issues.
The argument that was made, and I don't agree with it, but the argument that was made by the Director of Finance was that some of these folks in their department head are way behind where their salary structure should be.
And the employees are also.
I would agree there.
Yes.
Now, it was also brought back up through this hearing, and this is where you get a lot of this really good information, is some of these folks have moved into that department head role that they're supposedly so far underpaid just in the last 2 years. Some have maybe been there for longer, but some have moved there recently. So it wasn't as if they were hired for a job and not given a raise for the last 15 years, right?
Well, it seems to me like when you listen to the budget hearings and they talk about raises, they talk about three different subjects. They talk about the Bolton study, which gives you the low, middle, and high range. They talk about tier raises, and then they talk about annual raises. Well, you've got to decide which one of the three systems you're going to go with. You can't pick and choose out of each one because as they're doing right now, they have some employees that they claim are above the max in the Bolton.
For Bolton.
For Bolton.
Yeah.
And that they say these employees will not get a raise this year. Well, what kind of motivation is that for an employee?
And I think what the council wanted was at least a cost of living adjustments for those
That's one
people.
of the things that was addressed. Give them the cost of living increase, which is 3%, because if you don't, you're actually decreasing their pay.
Yeah.
Their spending power has decreased this year, and it's going to decrease next year.
But I think we need to differentiate between a cost of living adjustment, a COLA, than a merit-based increase. You know, you can't avoid giving cost of living adjustments. You know, as inflation increases, as you just mentioned, Jim, you're behind the eight ball. You're losing ground. But just to give raises for the sake of giving raises, I've got a problem with that. In the private sector, you get a merit raise. And I think the government sector needs to reflect that. Just you don't get a trophy just for participating.
Well, and in the private sector, a lot of times merit raises are capped at like say 10%, even when you change the position.
Sure.
It's not that they're saying, well, look, you're only going to make 10% more the rest of your career, but they break them out. And I think this was the argument that the county council came back to. They asked the county executive and the director of finance to come up with more of a 2 or 3 year plan. So if some of these folks need to be moved up at a significant level, it's done in like 9% stages, not all at once. Because once we agree to this, the taxpayers, we're on the hook the next year. So if the economy really falls apart in some way.
But you can't, and you're right, but you can't have merit raises and get increases without evaluations of your employees.
They never talk about
this
that.
County,
The merit raises.
This county does not do evaluations on their employees. Yeah. They do length of service and annual raises. They don't evaluate people.
Talking about a lack of motivation.
Yes, it's
and that's the fundamental difference between the government sector and the private sector.
Exactly.
And as I've said many times before on the show, without a profit motive, you have an inefficient system. And
well, let's talk about the raises from the other side. I mean, so we have we have our state's attorney, and she's a constitutionally elected official, and yet the county executive chose to fund 3 of her vacant positions that folks have decided to leave, take other positions elsewhere, move them all the way back at the base, and Jamie Dykes talks about this. There was meetings back in March, promises were made. At least conversations were had. Budget comes out in the middle of April. Bam.
Surprise.
It's just there. Yeah. So if our county executive is going to worry about a deputy director of administration, which doesn't exist right now, and getting that position a raise, why wouldn't we want our prosecutors to have at least a middle ground?
Well, we would, of course. Look, I can understand where it's very difficult to attract an attorney, who's gone through years of schooling into a job such as being an assistant state's attorney or a prosecutor. They're not going to make as much as they would in the private sector. So it has to be the type of person who is motivated by passion, I think, more so than money, but they have to have a certain amount of money to maintain a good standard of living. But to actually reduce the funding, it makes me wonder, does our county executive really care about public safety?
Well, it
Not
makes
unless
you
there's
wonder.
a camera rolling.
It makes you wonder because in the last 2 or 3 hires that the county has done, they have come in there with department heads and directors and said, we need to pay this person above the mid-range. The last example being the director of public works. He was hired. The job was posted at, I believe, $145,000. They came in when they put him in front of the council at $161,000 because that's what he said he needed. So,
It must have been hard to calculate that when he only stayed for 3 weeks.
Yes, yeah.
I wonder if that was
how that turned out.
That probably took some calculator math there.
Yes.
County executive's budget has increased from 2024 to now over $100,000. What's the breakdown on the increase in that? And now it's going up to 805,000. So we're talking $100,000.
So the tipping fees at the landfill, the council has signaled that they are unwilling to just spike those up once again the county executive put a big spike in there. Once again, there's really not a lot of information that shows why.
And once again, as in last year when all this happened, there was no communication with the trash disposal haulers. They didn't see this coming again. They came to the council last year, and it all got worked out with the council, the executive, and the disposal companies.
Yeah.
And the understanding was that there would be discussions this year before it happened. Well, guess what? No discussions.
Just crickets, huh?
Just here we go. Here.
Well, all right. So crickets. The Verizon building probably has some crickets, and and really expensive crickets, and we're finding out now. You know, we're going to show some footage of how this process started in January of 24. So we're talking almost 18 months ago. John McClenahan from SVN, who's a commercial real estate developer, came in and spoke to the county council at the request of the health department and the executive's office.
The first item on the agenda tonight is a public hearing on the purchase of real property known as 1401 Mount Herman Road, Salisbury, Maryland, for use of the Wycomico County Health Department.
Matthew McConaughey, I'm the health officer for Wycomico County.
John McClellan with SVN Miller Commercial Real Estate.
Julie Giordano, County Executive.
Lucky Luffman, Director of Administration.
Thank you.
All right, so good evening. Wanted to come to you before you tonight and give the public an opportunity to hear more about the proposed purchase. So you've got the property located on Route 50. As I mentioned, it's 34,000 square feet on 2 levels, full elevator access, multiple stairs, multiple entrances, could allow for separate functions. New 2020 HVAC system. Roof is approximately 7 years old. We have had it inspected. I'll touch on that in a few minutes. The contract price at $3,650,000 is $108 a square foot. Verizon has vacated the building, or has largely vacated the building, but their lease does run through October 31st of 2025. They are required to pay rent for that amount of time. The county can collect the rental income during a planning process. We've been through some due diligence. As you know, the property went under contract on December 22nd. We have till February 20th for a 60-day due diligence. Closing could occur anytime before March 21st. The inspections we've completed so far is a roof inspection, HVAC, elevator, structural, plumbing, electrical, generator, and an environmental phase 1. Nothing that he considers a glaring problem.
Appraisals, did you get appraisals?
I did. I just forgot to mention that. Property has appraised at $3,920,000. There should be some rental surplus. The county should see a surplus, especially for an unoccupied building.
This might be a question for the executive's office or Matthew. How about retrofitting, operational or whatever you want to call it?
I've not talked with an engineer or architect yet in regards to that, but the way it's structured, there's main concrete and steel structural columns throughout the building, so everything else is pretty much can be retrofitted as long as you don't mess with those integral structural pieces. So it should be easily retrofitted. It should be easily completed once we sit down and review about what space is needed and how it will be designed for efficient flow and activity.
Desk and office equipment and all that, you don't have any prices on what that's going to be or anything?
Mainly we'd probably be bringing a lot of that equipment from our current facilities, so we already have that in place.
Off the, John, you say we're going to get rent from from Verizon.
Mm-hmm.
So when you take that off of the purchase price, what's our price going to be?
I had that in my prior folder. The total revenue over the next, starting January 1st, we'd take a little bit off, but starting January 1st, the total revenue from Verizon's $1.7 million.
That's what they're going to pay us over
They're
the
going to
next...
pay you, yes. Out of that, I project about $300,000 of expenses. $1.4 million would be the net revenue to the county against, so you're going to go in with about a $2.2 million purchase price on a...
They asked to purchase this building for a little over $3.6 million. The selling point is this rental income that we were supposed to receive from Verizon for the next 18 months as a county, about $1.4 million, well, $1.7 million minus about $300,000 in operating costs, down to about 1.4. We're finding out now that they need in the budget they requested $2.75 million in renovations, and the money from the lease just went into the general fund and has been spent.
Well, it's pretty hard to track that rental income when it's just going into a general fund. You have to segregate projects. The money for this project comes from here, it goes out there. I mean, that's just basic good business and cost accounting. But really, what really disturbs me about this, at a $3.6 million acquisition cost and then a $2.7 million price tag for interior improvements. Now, this is a building that already, it's not a cold, dark shell. It already has interior finishes. I'd be hard pressed to justify spending what we're talking about 75% of the acquisition cost in tenant improvements.
2026, the majority of the funds actually all the funds that we're requesting for the health department is for the actual renovation of the Verizon building. Right now, this has in there concept of possibly putting in a second elevator and or expanding the elevator that we currently have, because the elevator that we currently have is relatively small. Their original request to administration had the elevator out 3 to 4 years. And we decided that didn't seem appropriate to renovate the whole building and then tear it apart again too. But if we ultimately in the next 2 or 3 years find the funding to expand the campus like we've talked about and put some of the Fritz stuff at the Verizon location, then those would be things that would be transitioned to other needs. But we wanted to put them on here because the flooring at Fritz, some of it's original. So again, because at this moment, we don't have on the plans when we're looking to expand the Verizon location to take those services on, those are on here.
The funds that we're getting from the lease is $54,000?
I didn't bring those numbers with me, so that's one number that doesn't stick in my head.
I guess my question is, where's the money?
Those funds go into the general fund.
Could they be used to offset the cost of the building renovation?
Well, I mean, any general fund money is available for us to do renovations. So those are revenues that are part of the general fund, which then flow into the availability of PAYGO funding.
Is it?
You got it under general obligation bond. You're bonding that money. Well, I think what Jeff's meaning, could we reduce the amount of the bond by using the revenue from the Verizon building?
Well, I mean, that is an option that we could take.
Roughly $50,000 a month for 2 years. That's $1.2 million. So that would be. It is funds that will be reflected in. We didn't have it very long when we're doing the June 2024 fund balance. There's been discussions, well, let's just set this money aside to reserve it for this. Well, sometimes it's easier just to use the money that you currently have than creating another pot to have to keep track of. These funds came in and we used them for our current needs, and thus we will have future needs that we will have to fund.
But doesn't it show a truer cost of a project if you're taking monies that you're earning from that source, i.e. the Verizon building, and using it to offset renovations? You can say, so this project's only cost us this much because we use the revenues that we got from the rent.
I mean, we could do that.
It's the whole county, and the whole county pays everything, but it just seems to me like it shows a truer cost of what a project is.
We can say, I can easily show that ultimately the county collected this amount of money and we are renovating to this level. Do we want to put those restrictions on ourselves when we have needs in the fiscal year that the money came in on? My recommendation would be no. My recommendation is you use the funds that you have to pay the bills that you have, and then you look at your future revenues to see what bills you have for there.
Personally, I think it's absolutely astronomical that we're asking for $2.7 million to do renovations on the building we spent about $4 million for. If we'd known that, we would have spent $7 million for a brand new building and gotten probably a nice brand new building. I found that very surprising. So if you can get us an itemization of that, I don't think we have it yet.
And we won't until honestly, we won't have an itemization until we have the architectural plans Again, this is being funded out of fund balance. It is not intended to be funded out of a, actually, no, this one is being funded out of general obligation bond. We will not have that bond. By the time we are ready to finalize the dollar amount for the bond, we should have a better idea as to the architectural estimate, as to whether or not the $2.75 million is appropriate for that bonding.
You should be looking at something like 15, maybe 20% tops in tenant improvement costs relative to the acquisition cost. Those numbers are way out of whack.
Well, here's the other issue that goes with that. $2.75 million to renovate this building. But there are no renovation plans. There are no drawings. There is nothing. There's just an ask for $2.750 million so we can.
And they asked for this initially in December of last year.
Yes.
Without having done a needs assessment first, and as
it's
you
been
mentioned,
5
Jim,
months.
there are no preliminary architectural plans for the tenant improvements.
Well, okay, so here's one thing I hope that taxpayers out there can really put their heads around, is the fact that the executive's office wanted to bond this $2.75 million renovation. The county council made it very clear last week they have no intention of bonding $2.75 million to do this. What Director of Finance Pam Olin asked the council to do is to bond $3 million of other capital projects that are in the executive's budget that total $9 million, okay? They're going to bond that to leave this money open out of our savings account. So you could be talking about the water tower in Pittsville. You could be talking about some of the sanitary district work that they're looking to do it in Parsonsburg. A lot of people don't even know we got one coming to Parsonsburg. They will when we start getting water bills in Parsonsburg. But this is the shell game. And I want to remind everybody, just 2 months ago, our county executive was proposing to break our revenue cap to the tune of $3 million.
So if council's interested, I would request we consider at least moving 1 or 2 projects, and you take out the one, but that leaves us the opportunity to then have some fund balance available. Again, if council is interested in cutting that, I would ask that we consider shifting a couple things over.
We might want to make that recommendation because it'll probably get cut.
Why is it you would propose to raise people's taxes, 2 months later have a proposal to renovate a building without plans, to then be like, well, just go ahead and borrow the money somewhere else. That way we have it to spend. I'm going to say no, let's not have it to waste.
Well, the breaking the revenue cap is a very interesting thing, because the county executive on another broadcast made the statement that she never planned on breaking the revenue cap. In her words, it was a bait and switch for the council.
Okay.
She wanted to bait them, get everybody all upset about breaking the revenue cap. And then when she came in to present her budget, she enjoyed sitting there watching the look on the council's face when she said she had a balanced budget and had fully funded the Board of Ed, plus given the Board of Ed more money. Her words exactly.
I think
bait and switch.
You look up transparency in the dictionary. Bait and switch is not part of it, right?
Is not the definition of transparency.
What I don't understand is you were so kind to the state's attorney as she sat here and told you, we're hiring these people, we need to do this. I'm asking for the same kindness.
You keep saying we're not kind to you.
You're not kind to me. You're not kind to me.
I really do hope people remember, because she started election season now. Yeah. I mean, we're still a year and a half away. She's already announced she's running. You have someone who, she's an English teacher who says she doesn't like math, who has shown in her career that she's not very good with money, and she's playing games with our money.
Yes, she is, and that's taxpayer money. It's not government's money, it is our money. She's talking about commingling funds here. makes it very difficult to do accurate cost accounting that way, makes that shell game very easy to play. And that's not transparency. And she simply is not negotiating with the council in good faith when you play these kind of games. We're talking about taxpayer money. Don't play games with it. Do the right thing.
In Wycomico County, we pay the highest income tax rate, piggyback tax, that the state of Maryland allows. And I know there's no way the state of Maryland's going to allow us to reduce our income tax rate and still give us a disparity grant. So we're kind of stuck there. But given the fact that we're all paying this high rate, the one thing we do have in this county is the revenue cap that keeps, and even if you don't own property, it keeps it down for businesses. It keeps it down for renters. It does find its way into other parts of the community. But then when you have someone who is willing to just play games with the numbers, turn numbers out 18 months after, 9 months after a year ends, and then also talk about bonding one project to actually pay for another, these are not things that normal people would do.
Well, it's certainly not the type of financial practices that a conservative should ever dream about. Busting the revenue cap, trying to find a way to raise our taxes. How is that conservative?
Well, since you brought up the magic word, transparency.
Yeah.
I want to get into transparency just for a second.
Sure.
At the last council meeting, I made a request in the public comments that when the public goes online to look at the county budget, it is a 50-page county budget. The county council has a 242-page budget to look at. So the citizens are looking at 192 less pages than the council members. Of detail of where the money's being spent and how it's going to be spent. And when the finance director was asked the possibility at next year that the public be able to see the entire budget that the council sees, their response, and this is the second time this response has been used in the past month, is the charter states that the executive can present the budget in whatever manner they choose to present it.
The presentation of administrative costs that are part of a fund is allowed to be decided by the government, and per our charter, it says the executive is allowed to present the budget in any form he or she would like.
Which means you're not going to get to see it because they're not going to give it to you.
You're not going to get to see all of it.
And that's transparency.
It's the mushroom theory of management. Keep you in the dark and feed you a lot of,
Yep.
Well, and to taxpayers out there who don't want to sit through a 50-page budget or a 242-page budget, folks like Jim are an asset to the community that they'll go page through it. And if you just go to the county council meetings and listen to public comments from someone like him or some of the other folks, and there's definitely areas that all of us dive into the details more than others, you'll get a general sense of whether or not your tax dollars are being accounted for. I got the impression that the council wanted to see the whole budget posted, so they've decided not to post it.
The council sent the letter to the finance director, and the response was, "It's the executive makes the decision how it's put out."
So she's made this decision.
So they've made the decision,
folks. We're going to need you to remember.
The public's not getting it.
Yep, this is a decision she's made. Yep. Well, thank you both for coming out. Thanks for covering this, and we'll keep everybody up to date. The plan is for them to approve the budget at the second June meeting, but I'm sure they're going to have more hearings. Thanks for watching this segment of Open Agenda. We'll be right back.
The Upper Ferry operates on the Wycomico River and connects the west side of the county on the peninsula between the Nanticoke and Wycomico rivers to Eden, which is situated south of Fruitland, thus bypassing the big city. The Upper Ferry is one of 2 public ferry boat operations on the Wycomico River and is the first place to cross the river south of Salisbury. The upper ferry helps to reduce traffic congestion near downtown Salisbury, where, if not for the ferry, one would have to cross the river on the Route 50 or Fitzwater Street drawbridges. The ride across the river is very short, only about 2 minutes, but you'll be able to enjoy a pleasant view while avoiding city traffic. The upper ferry is a small vessel with a maximum capacity of 3 cars, 6 passengers, or 10,000 pounds. The ferry boat runs along a heavy wire cable beneath the water's surface, so if you're boating on the Wicomico River near the upper ferry and you see it underway, please come to a full stop and wait, because the cable is pulled up to the surface as the ferry boat cruises along and can snag your outdrive or propeller, creating a dangerous situation for both you and the ferry boat alike. The ferry boat has the right-of-way at all times and is privileged under the inland navigation rules as a vessel restricted in its ability to maneuver, which is visibly indicated on the ferry's masthead during daylight hours by 3 vertically aligned geometric black shapes depicting a ball over a diamond over a ball. After dark, or in conditions of limited visibility when the day shapes can't be easily seen, you'll see 3 vertically aligned lights on the masthead configured as red over white over red. Before your boat continues its journey up or down the river, it's best to wait until the ferry lands on either bank to ensure everyone's safety. There's no charge to ride on the upper ferry, and it runs 7 days per week, year-round, but is closed on county holidays. The ferry's hours of operation are adjusted seasonally, and there are times when the boat is out of service for repairs or when weather or river conditions cause operations to be temporarily suspended. So, it's always best to check the Wicomico County Department of Public Works website before leaving home, or you can call the ferry hotline at 410-543-2765 for a status report. This is Mike Goldberg for Open Agenda.
I know what I'm doing, man.